but again, I didn't take that away from her. She could do whatever she wanted, but that was just my recommendation. And so she went through it. She finally was able to break the tie and make some changes, start rebuilding her life. But she had to come out of untitled self-deception. She knew what she was doing wasn't right, but she was allowing herself to be deceived, and she was deceiving herself. Does that make sense? And we all can relate with that in one way or another.
Yeah.
So, in fact, not too long ago, I was talking to her on the phone, and she was, she basically said, again, you saved my life. And I said, no, I didn't save it. I helped you to save it. You and Jesus did it. So.
That reminds me of Carl Jung's archetype, the prostitute. And a lot of time, we think of that word and we think of that action only, but it's any time that you sell a boundary for something that you feel is comfortable in the moment. That's how I was seeing it, because I was correlating it kind of with the codependency, as a wife, thinking that oh, I have to do these things, and that as a wife, this is my ministry, and I feel like it's not a big difference, So that was my process.
I know I probably went a little deeper than maybe should have, but anyway. Go ahead, Willie. You ready to wrap her up?
Admitting the exact natures of our wrongs includes giving our accounts in exact and specific terms. It is only when we get specific that we know that we will no longer be able to be fooled ourselves. But the nature of our wrong, be fooled about the nature of our wrongdoing, of our wrongs. Since we cannot ignore God and get away with it anyway, we might as well come clean and be forgiven.
What do you think about that statement?
Well, if you want to be better, God's the only way it's going to get you better, and you got to be truthful with Him because He's truthful with you, and there's no other way than that.
Okay. Anybody else? So, what did you learn from tonight's lesson?
Be truthful. Be truthful with yourself, because that's where you need to start. Be truthful with God, and then everybody else, it all falls in hand.
And so what's your takeaway?
That I can continue the path that I'm on and just start realizing that I don't need to lie to myself to get where I'm going. My path's already there. I just got to quit lying to myself and press on, clean up as I go.
Okay. Thank you, Willie. And that's reflection and questions.
Yes. All right. I love how God is when you're working on something and then all of a sudden, here's a lesson, and gives you an opportunity to teach what you've been going through. So, I know I've shared over the last 9 months that I've been doing a lot of studying, a lot of healing, a lot of inner child stuff, and so this really is what I have been digging for. So the question is, as you examine yourself, can you admit to some self-deception in the past? A lot of my self-deception I had to
I've been really finally getting to like the root of behaviors. I've been doing this for 13 years. I've identified the quote unquote toxic behaviors, but where did those toxic behaviors come from, and what is my actual sin? And like, so as I'm reading, and Jesus, he says like, be angry, sin not, don't let resentment and bitterness take root. So that's the sin nature, the resentment, the bitterness, the holding it in, the not emptying it out, the shame. These are the roots that I found of all of those behaviors: the shame, the beating myself up to such a degree because I felt unworthy. And a lot of it did come from not forgiving myself. And whenever I first started doing like the mirror exercise, it was, me trying to, I guess, convince myself instead of going to God and being like, I forgive myself because you forgive me. You say I'm blameless after I've said these things and I've forgiven, then I choose to believe that I am now, because it's forgiven and forgotten, right? That's what it says in the Bible. And so a lot of the self-deception was, as long as I continued in shame or guilt or resentment or bitterness, that's where, like Doug said, I continued to blame. And a lot of times I blamed myself more than I blamed others, because I had gotten to such a point after so much of like the abuse cycle that I thoroughly believe like if this is always happening, then it is always my fault, and maybe to an extent, but it's like also having to pull that web apart and be like, okay, no. Two traumatized people attract each other, right? And so to pull that out, let them have theirs, you keep yours, and then figure out where the root is. And that's how I've been able to come to like admit through multiple times going through this what the self-deception is, and that that is like the thought that I'm not worthy enough for God's forgiveness. I'm not worthy enough for my own, and because that's what shame does. Shame tells you you aren't.
Shame tells you that you are a mistake,
Yes.
not that you made a mistake.
Exactly. Yes, and so that's what I was over there thinking about, and I forgot it when I got up, was talking about Carl Jung's archetypes. Is you can view shame as an archetype, so you, instead of being like, this is my shame, no, I have been shamed, I owned it, but I can pull it off. It's its own entity now, and as you can view it as a trash can. So as I take it off and I'm identifying, I can pull these pieces out and put it in the trash can.
Yeah.
And that's what I have chose with all those: the shame, the guilt, the resentment, the bitterness, the rage, the anger, and also sit with them and be like, okay, what are you teaching me? What do I need to learn about this? Kind of like I said, I create best friends. So if they've always been with me, tell me what it is that I'm not figuring out right now.
Yeah, good.
And then you learn, like, they weren't, for me, I don't think that they ever felt like that they were actually there to be destructive, but to protect. And so it's no longer a darkness for me. It is now like, okay, I understand why you exist, why you existed. I'm not going to say that, I'm not even going to blame them anymore, and that's where, like, I feel like I've been able to find the gratitude in the long suffering. Like, I'm grateful in these moments, because like if I didn't have the warrior archetype, which is the rage and the anger, I would have never had the guts to leave domestic violence. You know, if I didn't have the warrior archetype, I would have never had the guts to defend my children, you know? And so I can't hate it completely, but maybe like you shine light on it and you realize that the shadow is bigger than what it actually is, kind of thing. And so you're able to own it, like, this is actually like a emotion God put in me to protect myself and to protect my children and to protect others. But when we can take it too far after we've gone through too much, you know, and then we start causing harm, which was a major, major breakthrough for me. Because then I'm like, I don't have to feel shame. It was what it was and it served a purpose. And now it's able to like lose its weight and still stick around, you know? And so now I'm able to see boundaries and set the boundaries within myself. So they're like the bricks that we talked about a couple weeks ago about like building that fortress, you know, that fortress of strength in God, or fortress of refuge. And so that's how it's helped. And I hope that like I didn't over explain that. I've just gone through a lot of trying to figure it out, to how God is going to, he is and has always been causing it to work out for my good. So, do you have any other questions?
Hold that right there.
Yeah.
I don't have a question. I can make a statement
Okay.
if you want me to.
Sure.
And a lot of what you're saying, you're still in process of trying to figure all this out, but you have more clarity now than you ever have before, which is good, which may seem confusing to some people that are not at that place at this time, but you know, those, the psychological rule that I talked about a while ago, and then I have a breakdown on that sheet back there, it talks about that part being the shadow, which we hate the shadow, but actually the shadow is when we break down it about the we are become friends with that part of us and get the signals instead of having it cause us to go into a defense mechanism, and if we can learn to embrace that part of us, which is healthy, what you were talking about a while ago, the rage aspect of we're not doing it, then that's when it becomes unhealthy and destructive.
Yeah.
And the point about, you know, toxic people, they do attract other toxic people because that's a part of us that internally we need that healing. We want that healing, and as it says, it will cause it to happen in the world. It prefers or cause it to happen because of that trying to work out this conflict. That's that part of us that wants to do it. And as Robert Swartz talks about in his book, There's No Bad Parts, that it actually they're trying to help us, and they get so caught up in trying to help us that they can literally even cause harm to us to try to manage that situation. And as we then start to align with that true self that is inside of us, then we're able to really start to come into that place that we have that peace and that harmony and that wholeness that we're really looking for.
So I was thinking over there about the, law of attraction. What you seek is seeking you, and with deception, like
that was a big thing with me, is always being the victim of deception in my mind at the time. But as going through this, it's like, if I'm seeing deception, what is it in me that's being deceptive, and am I deceiving myself? And that was really like a major catalyst to start doing the shadow work and the inner work and sorting through the stuff and calm the pendulum swing down, way down, you know, because then now I'm able to see it and be like, okay, I'm not going to allow that ball to knock me over here. Instead, I can just be a rock.
Because it's a force of itself,
Yes.
you know, and it causes it to swing both ways.
Mhm.
And the extreme of both ways are destructive.
Yeah. Okay. Second question. Does anyone have the freedom to speak truth into your life on a regular basis? I have a couple of people. The guy I've been seeing, actually, I like that he can be very forward. I don't want to say blunt, you know, blunt can seem very bad, I guess, but he's forward about things.
How about assertive?
Assertive. He is, you know, and won't allow me to over-exaggerate or even own his stuff, you know, and at this time, which is good, is great. I am cautious about who I allow. Always Doug, you know, for a long time. You need to start with someone, and there is a person at church. So I have a few, but I always like to sit with myself before I go and be like, okay, hey, like, I can't figure this out. What is it? You know? But then I take their stuff and I've always been a trust but verify, and so like I take their stuff and I'll pray and I'll ask God, like, okay, is this true? Because coming from codependency and being codependent for so long, I also have to be careful not to own everybody's stuff as truth too, you know. And so this is just a very cautious question for me. I am able to now, I have at least 2 other people that I can take what they say as truth, you know. So that is way more than ever, I think. So, because even my questions, or my parents, I always questioned their motive, you know, so I never just took it as truth. Do you have anything to add? Okay. Ask 3 or 4 trusted friends to write 5 words describing your strengths and 5 words describing your weaknesses. Record them here and examine them to discover areas you can work on within your small group of trusted fellow strugglers. So I'm going to start with Tommy's because his were the shortest. Strengths are that I see your confidence and honesty. You take care of yourself and you're well respected. Now, weaknesses is just really the normal human stuff. And I really liked that answer. Not that I didn't like the rest, but you'll see. I liked it. 5 strengths, Willie said, 5 strengths are determined, understanding, joyful, polite, compassionate. Weaknesses are seeking approval, regret, traumatizing, I guess being, you know, me traumatizing others, or the shame, is that what you're talking about, or being traumatized?
You holding on to it too long.
Yeah.
That's where I come up with that one.
Yeah. Keen, I took that as like being hypervigilant and always just like waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Yeah.
And being too trusting.
That runs in the family.
It does run in the family. And then 5 strengths, I asked Doug to do it too, and he said smart, persistent, good-hearted, fierce, and kind. 5 weaknesses, things that you say to yourself to hurt yourself or cause harm are false belief that you are powerless, wounded, or hurt, the false belief that you are broken, the false belief that you are angry or rageful, the false belief that you are worthless, the false belief that you are alone or abandoned. And I like the way that that was put, because I'm actually at a point now, if he knows that, like, even 2 years ago, if he would have put it like that, I bet, accept and allow. That's something I tell myself all the time, especially whenever I start having negative thoughts and replacing them. I talk to myself all the time, if not out loud, in my head. It starts this thing, I'm like, no, we're gonna accept and allow. No, that's not who we are. No, if I get really mad, I'm like, no, thank you. That is not true. You know, because it's like, I don't even know what it is. It's like, there's a thinking part of your brain, and then there's like this mean part of your brain that they're like, it really feels like they're fighting while you're going through this, and it's like, shut up. You know, so I'm like the crazy person in my car at a stoplight while I'm trying to process something. Just shut up, brain, right now. But that's okay. I'll be the crazy person if it brings healing. You know, Jesus was a crazy person. So
We're all crazy. It's all just a matter of degrees.
it is. You know, I was thinking about this the other day because God had revealed, like, insanity is the process to sanity, and it took a little bit further, and it made me laugh. He's like, and once you think you're sane, you look insane. So congratulations, you re-enter the process. And I'm just like, well, mic drop. And it's just a whole nother level, I guess, of insanity. So,
Good?
anything else to add?
No?
All right, my takeaway. Do you want to ask the question?
No, go right ahead.
I didn't want to take away from you. So, my takeaway from this is that the process really is not, I'm going to say this, it's going to sound heartless. It's not as bad as it seems. And I get it. You know, I remember, and I'm sure in the future there might be moments where, like, it just feels like it's the heaviest thing. But the clarity that I am at today, because it's just for today, is I'm able to look back at this part that was, to me, the deepest pits of hell, and be grateful and also proud of myself for partnering with God to get through, and not taking myself out in the moments I wanted to, and not taking others out in the moments that I wanted to, you know, because I still have my freedom, and I still have my life, and I still have my God. And I am still dealing with consequences, you know, with my oldest not wanting to talk to me. I've lost friendships that they don't want back, and that's fine, you know. But I've planted those seeds of, I'm sorry I did this. I can only go so far, and then I say the truth, make my peace, and then accept and allow. And if it's in God's will, I'll get those relationships back, you know, because he says, like, he will restore us. And so once you get out of that process of the hell, and you're able to see and hear and receive, then it is starting a whole new process of restoration. When really the whole process is restoration. It's just, we're not as dense as we once was.
The only comment I have on that, and I thought what you said was really good, that you made a comment that it's not as hard as we think it is.
Mm-hmm.
And really the hard part is being willing to go ahead and make that decision, mm-hmm. to make that action. And the action is not as hard as we thought it was. The hard part is be willing to go ahead and make the decision.
Yeah.
Isn't it true? And when you make the decision, in fact, and then just lean a little bit forward, and then it'll start pushing you through it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I was just thinking, like, the fear of letting go and the fear of the unknown is because that means we're having to let go of a world that we built, and we think that if we remove ourselves that we're going to destroy everything, when we when it really it is, we're removing ourselves from that because it's crushing us. And, let it fall, let it burn, let it crumble. It wasn't meant for us, so.
That reminded me of the old statement that I heard about people that was on the Titanic, and they were carrying their money with them, and most of it was in gold in their belts, and they didn't want to let go of that was causing them to go down into the water.
Yeah.
And so because they wouldn't let go of it, they stayed with it to the bottom.
Yeah.
And if we can let go of that's drowning us, then we can arise and be free.
Like a refiner's fire, become a phoenix. Okay.
So your takeaway?
That was it.
Don't stress the process. We can't add, life be lifing, okay? It already has issues. Let's stop adding to the issues by beating ourselves up for the issues that we can't control.
Okay.
Life be lifing, remember that.
Life be life.
Life be life.
I still have a teenager, so.
Next week, let's see, Tommy's going to be doing it, and it's taking time to grieve. That would be a good one, right? And that's out of Genesis 23. And then Lori will be doing reflection. Oh, I thought you wanted to speak.
No, I was just acknowledging you.
All right, any comments from the group?
No, sir.
Good to see you tonight.
Congratulations on 9 months.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, congratulations. May the Lord bless you and keep you, and may His face shine upon you and give you His peace. And of course,